Hi Q, thank you for your time today. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your classes at FLS International and your experience working with Japanese students. So first of all, could you introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Sequoia, but you can call me Q. That's my nickname that my students have called me. I've worked at FLS for a few months, but before that I was teaching in Japan. And I've been teaching English for about 7 years. And before that I taught for a total of like 17 years. So I'm a very experienced teacher.
Thank you. And you've mentioned that you taught in Japan for a long while,
Yep,
right?
5 years.
So how was that?
That was a great experience. I really enjoyed working with Japanese students, and while I was there I had many different kinds of jobs with different ages. So I of course worked at an eikaiwa, because everyone's English teacher's first job is at an eikaiwa. And then after that I worked at a juku and a hoikuen too. So I've worked with young students and retired students and teenagers too.
How do you encourage Japanese students who are shy or insecure about learning English? There are many shy girls, or
Yep.
right?
And guys too.
Yeah, guys too. Yeah.
Yep. Mainly I think that usually what my students are shy about is speaking. They have some confidence about reading and listening and even writing, but being able to speak makes them very shy. So what I suggest is if you listen to more native English things, like read audiobooks or watch movies, that sort of thing, that helps you know how native people speak. And then also I have many Japanese friends who of course can speak with me in English, so they know English, but when they're just with each other they only speak Japanese. So I think you need to practice trusting your Japanese friends to not tease you for your English so that you can practice speaking English with them.
That's great. And I've heard that your master's degree is in psychology, right? Oh my god, yeah. What are some scientific ways that people learn language based?
So when I was in Japan, I got trained in Tadoku method, which is extensive reading. It's different than intensive reading, where you're focusing on making sure you understand every word. So extensive reading means you can get the gist or the general idea of reading books, which is exactly the way that native speakers learn their own language. So when you're a kid and you're trying to learn your native language, your parents or your teacher read to you and repeat things a lot and slowly ask you questions about what you understand. And that's exactly how, as an adult, you need to teach yourself a new language. So people used to think that learning a second language as an adult was very different from learning your first language, but now the research says it's actually exactly the same process. It just happens slower because you're not focused so much on one thing. So try to find books that you're interested in and things you like to listen to and movies, so that you can get a lot of input, just like when you were a kid.
So finally, what are the advantages of studying abroad? I need this
a
answer.
lot, right? Exactly. This is key. So I'll say this: when I lived in Japan and I would get a new Japanese student who lived abroad or was a returnee from studying abroad or living abroad, they had a totally different level of expertise with English, and I could tell in just a minute whether they were a returnee or not, because they could speak more confidently. Their grammar was much more natural and like a native speaker. So usually people who only study in the country, meaning in Japan, just have grammar that looks like the textbook, right? This is a pen, things like that. But returnee students and even people who had just been abroad for a week or so, they definitely had a different style of speaking. And I think this is because your relationship with the language changes once you go to the country where it's spoken. And I remember me living in Japan, having learned some Japanese was very different than when I was going to the konbini and trying to get my food and what are you doing with my food? It's like, why are you putting it in the microwave? I don't want you to, what's happening? Like surviving, is very different than just reading a book very passively. So it changes your relationship with the language. So I think it's very essential to study abroad.
Okay. Thank you for your answering those questions, and I hope that the Japanese students who are thinking about studying abroad have found this useful. Thank you. 以上です。